Hello everyone, I'm Leslie Maltman and welcome to Reimagining events. This series of webinars has been designed by Tourism NI to support the events industry as we look forward to a time in the not too distant future where we can once again get together to share the live experiences we all miss so much. We know we need to look at things in a different way and from a new perspective. And these sessions are designed to help us to navigate the way ahead in a post-pandemic world. Today's webinar is about storytelling and is being delivered by Julie O'Brien. Julie has worked in tourism and hospitality for over 25 years. Originally working in events, she spent many years selling Ireland as a must-visit destination to potential visitors across the world. A commercial strategy, revenue generation, and product development expert, Julie believes in the value of partnerships to grow businesses. She knows that part of what makes our industry unique is the people who shape our events community, and Julie is fascinated by the unique visions, interests, and stories they bring to the wider tourism scene. Julie's going to take us through her presentation, and then there'll be a Q&A session. Thanks to those who've already submitted questions, and please do feel free to ask any further in the chat at any stage during the session. Without further ado, over to you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for that introduction. So as you've just said there, my name is Julie O'Brien, and I'm totally passionate about the tourism industry and about people who represent events and festivals in this industry. And the topic that we're going to look at today is a really exciting one: reimagining storytelling. So over the next hour, we're going to be considering this topic, and I would like you to think about how you will construct your storytelling to create real opportunities for your event and festival. So moving on, the topics that we are going to explore today are storytelling within a tourism context, placing your story, so the story for your event and festival, within the context of its destination, positioning the story for your event and festival within the context of diverse opportunities. We're going to look at planning the narrative component so that you can effectively share your story. We're going to look at a very important topic called the difference between the pitch and the experience. I'm going to ask you to think hard about that one. And then finally, we'll look at fleshing out the narrative components for your event and festival. So let's begin now with storytelling, and let's use the next hour as a way to really wrap ourselves in this world and thinking about how you can tell the story of your event and festival within a tourism context. So why do we talk about stories at all in tourism? Well, think about it. We are storytelling animals. That is how we are as human beings, and nowhere better to share this topic than in Northern Ireland, where you have such an incredible legacy of stories and legends and storytelling. Stories hook and hold us. They have a rhythm and a shape, and therefore, much like a song, we remember them. They get stuck in our heads, in our memories, in our hearts. Stories have a soul. They tap into our emotions. We feel them and we visualize them, and so they become at one within us. So of course, people who are storytellers, they need to find those stories. The stories need to be found, revealed, and shared by the people who own them. So think about that, your responsibility within storytelling. And when a story is beautifully told, what does it do? It manages to stir and inspire, grabbing the attention of the listener, compelling the listener to engage, compelling the visitor to come and experience your event or festival and destination. So for the people who are hearing these stories, the role of the storyteller is to prompt intrigue, delight, and clarity of people, place, heritage, traditions, culture, experience, and vibe. Stories thereby need to be placed within the context of their destination. And when we do this, our stories create clarity of people and place. Of course, stories can mark a brand new beginning. Our stories can very much connect us with our past, tracing a direct line from the past into the present, influencing our custom and our habits and our traditions. Stories create a distinct identity and a sense of pride within communities. So literally communities, when they understand their stories, they will walk taller. Imagine the impact that your event and festival can have there on your community. Of course, the trick is knowing how to share a compelling story and knowing how to adapt that story based on diverse opportunities. And this trick requires thought and preparation. So we're going to think about that now today. So before we go in diving deep into storytelling, let me share a story of my own. And I'm going to reel you right back to an earlier stage in my career when I was in my 20s. And at that time, as Leslie said earlier, I was responsible for selling Destination Ireland. And I got, a really lucky break because I got to pitch Ireland for a huge incentive group that was coming from France. And at the beginning of this pitch, there were 8 destinations. And I kept getting through every round. I was very passionate and I wanted to win this pitch. And at the end, it ended up being between Destination Ireland and in Spain. And therefore, I found myself in Paris, at the other side of a huge desk with a French lady on the other side who was considered a guru in the travel industry in France. And I was explaining all of the compelling reasons that her group should come to Ireland. This lady had never been to Ireland before. And I remember in that conversation, she made this remark. But maybe somewhere like Barcelona in Spain is more interesting than a destination than in Ireland, because you see here we've got the city and it's by the sea. Now, everyone listening in today is well aware that Ireland is an island, so you can imagine my reaction when I heard this. In fact, it was not unlike the stunned face, at least internally, that we see on this man engaging in the parade here. But in that moment in my career, I realized a really important thing, and it's this: the power of collaborative storytelling. The reality is that lone voices are hard to hear. Lone voices struggle to make a narrative understood. Lone voices struggle to make a narrative heard, and the road to success takes way longer for lone voices. So within our storytelling, we therefore need to bear in mind how we sell our stories and share our stories individually and collectively through unified communications. And sharing these stories individually and collectively is what leads to success for our events and festivals and our destination. So I want you to think about storytelling in this regard. And I want you to really hone in on that idea, how the collective is key for success. And in your heads now, I want you to think about how Ireland is full of beautiful places. And ask yourself the question then, why some places become more well known than others? Why does that happen? I know that practically without exception, the reason that happens is because of a blend of a number of really important ingredients. Within the place, within the destination, individuals come together as a collective. Experiences within the destination, whether that's an event or festival, a guided visit, an activity, a place to stay or eat, comes together to represent the destination. So the people and the experiences within the destination work within a collaborative framework. This becomes really compelling for the customer who hears positive communications, positive stories coming from those destinations. And therefore, the customers are intrigued. They want to come and visit and engage. And when they come, you make sure they have an amazing experience. And that's when the whole process becomes a lot easier. That customer will generate positive word of mouth among their friends and families, offline and online. That customer, you make them aware there's a ton of stuff to do in your destination. There's a ton of reasons to come back to your event and festival every time, every year, and they will become repeat visitors. So successful destinations are really based on, people individually and collectively sharing stories and communications within a collaborative framework. And I need you to have that concept within bright lights in your head for the success of your event and festival and for the success of the destination that you represent. So last week, I was honoured to present a webinar on reimagining commercial strategies. And within that webinar, we touched on this analogy here. So for those who were not at that webinar, I'm just going to quickly recap on this analogy. So I would like you to think about someone on the island of Ireland or anywhere else in the world. And when they think about your destination, are they seeing it as an empty chocolate box? And what I mean by that is you may live locally and you may know that there's an awful lot of interesting things to do and see in your destination. But if these have now pulled together into one destination proposition, if that destination is not sharing the stories individually and collectively about this offering, if the individuals and collective within the destination are not making that destination sing, then the customer sees an empty chocolate box and there is no reason for them to engage here. The alternative is we do pull together as individuals and collectives. We do share our story offline and online. And when this happens, we get a gorgeous layering effect through communications and storytelling, which leads to a rising tide. In other words, customers who come and visit and engage and pay for experiences within your event and festival and within the wider destination. So there's an onus upon us as event and festival organisers to share compelling stories offline and online, creating a strong sense of pride and identity, bringing our communities together and our people together with a knock-on effect of economic benefits and increased jobs for the community and the destination. So storytelling has an immense role within all of this, and be aware of the power of this and the importance of you therefore refining your stories to create opportunities. So let's move on now to take a look at placing your story within the context of its destination. So when we think about your event and festival in the context of its destination, we're going to, of course, begin with Destination Northern Ireland and this beautiful destination experience brand, Embrace a Giant Spirit. Then I would like you to think about your destination, wherever you are in Northern Ireland, your county, but beyond that, your city, your town, your village, your county, whether it's urban or rural or coastal. And I want you to then think about your event or festival story within this context. So how do we bring out the strands of this destination story and your place as an event festival within it? So as I just mentioned there, we've got the Northern Ireland Embrace a Giant Spirit destination experience brand. And a lot of you will know that a lot of work goes into creating brands, everything from the color to the logo, to the shape, to the identity, to the typeface and the design. And why do destinations put such work into beautiful brands like Embrace a Giant Spirit? Well, it's because they reflect the identity of our destinations. They unify us. They literally bring us together in that destination collection. They also provide a shortcut for our busy brains in a world where we're information overloaded. The brand identity, like we see here in Embrace a Giant Spirit, just provides a faster opportunity to understand the destination offering. So I'm going to say to you now, and I hope you have a pen and paper beside you where you're taking down tips. It is most important that you share this brand in all of your communications offline and online. You individually as event and festival organisers and collectively within your destinations, you are the ones that build this brand, Embrace a Giant Spirit. You are the ones that give the brand a voice. So you need to clarify your event and festival identity within it, and you need to realise your role in building the story and Destination Northern Ireland story. I'm a huge fan of this brand, and your role is to share and live up to its promise within your storytelling. So what is that promise? Well, within this brand, if you go into the detail, you will see that it promises that everyone from Northern Ireland should represent the very best of what this destination represents, literally a giant spirit. The job is to unlock that giant spirit in everything that is offered in this destination, events and festivals, adventure, discovery, and providing inspiration for visitors and customers to visit. So what is the brand? What is its story? And listen to this, what a beautiful story. Ours is a land built by a giant spirit. It's in our soil, our seas, and everyone you meet. It's what puts the warmth in our welcome and inspires us to go that extra mile. A giant spirit that builds our cities, shapes our landscapes, and flows through our words, music, and craft. You'll always find it close to hand, much like every discovery in this vivid, mythic place. Ours is a land built by a giant spirit. Let us awaken yours. So think about the importance of this brand and the beauty of this story and how you can literally awaken your own inner giant spirit within your storytelling for your event and festival to make your event and festival sing, your destination sing, and Destination Northern Ireland sing. So you play your role in making sure that this destination is known, across the island of Ireland and around the world as a compelling place to visit. So this brand is key for storytelling. It is the umbrella under which your event and festival stands. It is the story that your event and festival must share. It is the promise that your event and festival must live up to. So I'm going to ask you to think about all of the ways, offline and online, you can share this brand and live up to its promise, reinforcing what this story has to offer. Within your destination now, I'm going to ask you to consider Destination Northern Ireland and your county, and drilling down further into where you come from, your city, your town, your village, your community, like we said earlier, whether that's urban, rural, or coastal. And this for me is a beautiful part of storytelling. It's a reason I feel so privileged to have worked in the international markets for so long, because I got to listen to what international people were saying about the places when they visited in Ireland. And what I learned from them is we start to see Destination Northern Ireland from the outside in, not from the inside out. So rather than taking things for granted about our destination and our home, when you're finished this session today, go out for a walk or over the weekend, think about the stuff that if it wasn't there, you would miss. See your destination from the outside in so that you can appreciate it, so that you can find its soul, so that you appreciate that soul. And thereby, with that appreciation, you'll know how to communicate the soul, celebrate the soul of your destination. And if you make your destination sing, particularly in a passionate way that also has a degree of measurement, you will incite, motivate people, compel them to come and explore. So look at your destination, look at it physically in terms of the land and waterscapes. Think about the secrets that are known to you as a local person who lives here, the beautiful wood where you can have a picnic, the little beach where you love to have an evening stroll. Think about your destination in terms of the heritage, culture, habits, and traditions that belong to you, the little quirks, the little vibe that belong to your home, to your place. Think about the people, who you are, the people you live with. What defines them? Who are they? What are the habits and customs that they live up to? What is it that makes this destination as unique as a fingerprint? And when you think about your destination, I would like you to bullet point the key points that relate to your destination. And I want you to, pull out those bullet points and then practice drip feeding your communications into your stories offline and online, knowing that the stories you create, the stories that you have power over, will compel other visitors and customers and your local community, in fact, to engage. Now let's think about your event and festival within the context of its destination, within the context of its home. So through sharing your story within the context of its destination, like we've just explored, what you do, you reveal who you are, you reveal what your event and festival, the context for this event and festival, what it stands for, you reveal what your destination stands for. The ultimate outcome from that is you stand out from the crowd and you emerge as unique. So when you're positioning your festival or event within the context of its home, think about the destination and place itself. Think about the traditions, the customs, the habits that are associated with this place. Think about the themes that your event and festival follow and how they've been influenced by the place. And think about other elements that influence or can have an influence on the event and festival, like, for example, maybe a local artisan food movement that really tells the story of what your destination is about and can be shared through your event and festival offering. At the heart of every story, at the heart of every destination and destination experience brand, there is you. And it is really important to understand that you, your colleagues, your team, you are your own brand. In fact, branding all starts with you. You reflect everything. You present a compelling story and people will want to engage with you. So bear in mind the responsibility and the power that comes with that. You are the brand, you reflect everything, you create a compelling story, the people will engage and follow. So preparing your story so that you can create a following is a craft that is really crucial to engage in. Being aware of the power of you, that it is your brand that sets you apart. Let's look now, before we go into the narrative components and how we'll start to think about building your story, at the importance of positioning the story for diverse opportunities. So let's just say I pull out my story. I'm very clear on what my event and festival is about. I'm very clear about its context within my destination, within its home. I'm very clear about the Embrace the Giant Spirit destination experience brand, and I know how to promote this offline and online. I am proud to give that, this experience brand a voice, and I'm rising to the promise of this giant spirit myself in what I offer in my event and festival. When I start pulling out my narrative components like this, I need to be aware that when I present my story, how I present it, how I position the story of my event and festival may change based on the opportunity that presents itself. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, I'm going to position my story based on diverse markets. Well, I'll immediately need to think of different positioning there, because locals, just say I'm positioning my event and festival to the local market, well, the destination is going to be known to them. Maybe a lot of the themes of my event and festival will be known to them. So clearly I speak to them, I communicate my story with an informed audience, and I treat them as the informed audience that they are. Let's move on now to Northern Ireland counties outside of your own. So for people in these counties, maybe the event or the destination or the festival is known or unknown to them. Maybe they've visited or not visited before. And when I'm communicating with these counties, I need to be mindful, of course, that they live within the same destination in Northern Ireland. And when they engage with my event and festival, there may be some things I need to explain that might not be within their understanding. But when I share that story, I need to be fully aware that people from Northern Ireland, from the destination Northern Ireland, where this event and festival is taking place, do not want to be treated like a tourist. So I'm going to be mindful of that. Let's move on now to thinking beyond this, into getting, creating our stories in Republic of Ireland counties. And again, based on your target audience, there may be a level of understanding, or a low, medium or high level of understanding. The offering may be known or unknown. But again, when we move into Republic of Ireland counties, these counties, people do not want to be treated like a tourist. When they come to Northern Ireland, they want to engage with the place and the stories of this place without feeling like they're a tourist when they come from the same island. Let's move beyond that into the global markets. And we're thinking about, neighboring markets like Great Britain. And we move beyond that into maybe long haul markets or European markets, language markets where there are language differences like in France or Germany. So there now I need to communicate my story in a different way. For example, even verbally, I'd need to be mindful not to speak too quickly so that somebody does not speak English as a first language can keep up. If I'm sharing my story, say, with a customer from the Asian markets, I need to be mindful that there's no shared cultural root, and therefore how I share my story, the story of my event and festival, will need to be mindful of this. So when we work out our stories, we then understand that we need to reposition them for different opportunities, as we've seen here in the context of markets. I would urge you, just as we touched there on global markets, to think about, like I said there earlier, how it is really amazing to see the offering that exists in Northern Ireland through the eyes of an international customer. And when you're pitching, when you're sharing your storytelling to the international markets, to realise that there are a lot of things that will happen in Northern Ireland or that exist or that will be part of your daily living in Northern Ireland that are not normal, not everyday to the global markets. And I call that the extraordinary ordinary, the kind of things that you will take for granted, that if an international visitor were to look at, they would find it an absolute delight, something that they've never seen before. And when you listen to international customers, you'll hear them saying lots of things, like the way the light changes across the landscapes in Northern Ireland, the gorgeous legends and stories, the stone walls, the farming communities. So the beauty of a swan, I remember being with an international customer once in Northern Ireland, and they saw a swan for the first time. Imagine seeing a swan for the first time. They'd never seen one in their own country. Imagine the impact that that would have. So understanding the perspective of the global markets therefore enables us to position that story so we can enlighten and delight that customer too. Let's just think we're positioning our event and festival now to different customer types, maybe a general interest customer or a special interest customer, clearly two different categories of customers. So how we present our story will be different. So let's just say this is an event or festival based around the topic of horticulture, and I've got a customer that has a general interest. Well, maybe not a horticultural expert. Well, I need to be careful to prepare communications that include that customer, that speak to the needs of maybe this wider audience if I want to create it. Or maybe I also include special interest customers in my offering. And here we've got a capacity for greater understanding. Think of the expert horticulturalist, the one who has a keen interest in this topic. So maybe to this customer, I arrange my communications in a different way because they already come from a level of understanding. I might also pitch other types of events to this customer, such as niche events or premium priced opportunities. And finally, when we think about positioning, another example and repositioning based on opportunities, I'd like you to think about sales channels. So if I'm an event and festival and I'm positioning my story, for example, on my website, well, it is a direct sales channel. I am speaking directly to the customer. So when the customer reads my website content, I want them to make them feel as if they're entering my world. Therefore, I use imagery and I use first person language, I, we, our, to reel them into my world. If I'm on social media, again, I'll use first person language. It's a direct sales channel. I'm speaking directly to my customers. But you will know when we move on onto channels like Facebook or Instagram, the language becomes more snappy, we're careful with our imagery. We've got to get a strong story across with much less words. So we need to be mindful of how to address that. And maybe, depending on how advanced your festival is, you're also engaging in indirect sales channels. Maybe you're getting opportunities through, for example, professional travel agents, in which case often indirect language is used because the travel agent is bringing their customer to you. So we've got an indirect sales channel. So bearing in mind, the story might be repositioned based on markets, based on sales channels, or the interest level of our customers. So let's look now at the really important topic, bearing in mind the importance of that positioning, of planning the narrative components so that you can share the story of your event and festival well. So first of all, I would ask you to clarify the destination context. So we've spoken a lot about that, destination Northern Ireland, the experience brand, embrace a giant spirit, your place of home, and how you can tell your story within this context. Moving on from this, I would like you to consider clearly defining the motivation, the spirit of your event. So ask yourself these questions. Why is it happening? What is its purpose? What will visitors gain by attending? Moving on to point number 3 here, I'd like you to plan visual, verbal, and written content. I'll show you how to do this in a moment. And around that, I'd like you to think about your brand, visual images that share and celebrate your event and festival story. And I would like you to pull out words and put those words into 2 categories, mental images versus bullet points. So mental images are words that enlighten and delight customers. They are the key words of storytelling. For example, if I point out as a local a gorgeous river where locals like to have a picnic overlooking a stunning view, and especially if I reinforce that mental image with pictures, with visual pictures, I will enlighten the customer about my offering. Bullet points are the practicalities, duration, minimum, maximum number, maybe the kind of clothing we need to wear. So practicalities are important too. But when we are storytelling, we focus on mental images because that's where the enlightenment, that's where the delight, that's where the engagement happens. Moving on to point number 4 now, so remember we're thinking about planning the narrative components of your story. You need to clarify what is available for sale. For example, do you have free events? Do you have core offerings like a basic entry ticket price? Do you have premium offerings, for example, exclusive events? Do you have upsell offerings like merchandise? And we also, point number 5, need to clarify booking instructions. We need to make it easy for the customer to book us. So make sure your instructions for booking are clear offline and online. And for example, if you are engaging with international markets, make sure your communications in terms of telephone numbers show the international prefix to enable them to book swiftly too. So when we're planning the narrative components of the story of your event and festival, we need to think about 3 categories: visual storytelling, the power of an image stating 1,000,000 words; verbal storytelling, how we drip feed words into conversation, reinforcing them with verbal imagery so that the customer is enlightened and motivated to engage with our event and festival and destination. And then written storytelling, how we're going to communicate in writing offline and online via maybe direct and indirect sales channels. So before we go into those components, I'd like to just remind you that when we plan and build and clarify our story, we need to make sure that, there's enough time for our story to be heard. So we share our story well in advance of when the event or festival will take place. We allow a lead-in time so that the story can, reach the marketplace, be heard in the marketplace, giving enough time for customers to engage, be enlightened, and then book. And I need to state this really strongly because the international markets have given feedback that they are really interested in engaging with events and festivals in Northern Ireland, but we often inform them too late, which does not allow them enough time to book and travel. So bear in mind the importance of blending commercial and storytelling strategies so that we build business for the immediate, near and distant future across sales channels, markets and customer segments, like we looked at last week with the webinar on commercial strategies. So achieving bookings, often requires a long lead-in time where we share our stories, allowing the customer the lead-in time to book. So not expecting to tell the story today and expect the booking to arrive tomorrow. A lead-in time is required for effective storytelling. Of course, within the world that we're currently living in light of the pandemic COVID-19, there's also a balance required in our communications and our storytelling. So we very much want to encourage customers to engage and book and experience destination Northern Ireland. And through our storytelling, we need to achieve this. Many customers, in Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and around the world also want to have their safety and anxiety concerns addressed within our communications. So we need to be mindful of this, bearing in mind that we work within the worlds of tourism and hospitality. Our job is to ensure that customers have happy memories. So rather than using glaring messages that you might find in other environments, at the moment, our language always needs to be visually and in writing and verbally gentle. So this is why I like the "We're good to go" badge, because it actually defines the fact that your business is good to go, that it is well capable of addressing the anxiety and concerns of customers. And therefore it enables you to get on with storytelling and compelling those customers to travel and book from the moment that that is possible. So having considered the components of the building the narrative now, let's look at the difference between a pitch and the experience. And this is really important. I'm going to ask you, wherever you are, to sit up straight in your chair and listen to this part, or stand tall, whether you're in an office or in your own home. The pitch is very much a distillation. The experience is the full experience. So let's just say I'm a customer and I've booked to attend an event or festival, and I book a ticket for a particular event and that lasts 1 or 3 hours, or maybe I'm going to book a ticket for the whole festival and that lasts whatever it is, 3 or 10 days. I am the customer getting the full experience. That is very different to the pitch. The pitch happens at the stage where I'm trying to get the booking. At the pitch stage, I generally don't have an hour or 3 hours, and certainly not 10 days, to explain what my event and festival is about. I thereby need to be really organized. I need to have crafted my storytelling, my narrative really well, present it really clearly, visually, verbally, and written, present the essence of what my event or festival is offering, so that the person who is capable of booking a ticket to attend can quickly understand what my offering is about. So it is really important at the pitch stage that we hone our storytelling within a limited amount of time, say 5 or 10 minutes, to enlighten and delight and compel and motivate that customer to book. At the pitch stage, we thereby really need to think about clarity. Clarity is what enables us to achieve a conversion. And when I mean a conversion, I mean a confirmed paid ticket to attend the event or festival, which of course in turn leads to revenue generation. At the point of the experience, the customer turns up, they engage with the event and festival, they have a happy, positive experience. And this again is where we see positive word of mouth. The customer tells their friends and family, that customer becomes a repeat customer, they generate new customers, and we get more revenue generation. So at the point of the pitch, I need to be clear to get the conversion. And at the point of the experience, I need to make sure that the customer has an amazing time to ensure a rollover for my event and festival, so it is continued success. Of course, in the pitch, we are sharing a story. We're telling the customer compelling reasons that they need to engage with the event and festival. So, bearing in mind the promise of the Giant Spirit and the Embrace the Giant Spirit brand, I'm going to ask you to be really clear here. The experience must thereby live up to the pitch, because we cannot disappoint customers. So we live up to the promises of the pitch, ensuring that the customer has a positive experience when they arrive, and then all of that rollover begins. Bearing this in mind, let's take a look now at the narrative components for the event and festival and how we can flesh those out. So through our storytelling, we're going to make your event and festival, we're going to make your destination your home, and we're going to make Destination Northern Ireland sing. I do want to make you aware that events and festivals of all sizes, from the smallest to the largest, from small villages to regions to maybe globally known festivals, are of interest to all kinds of customers, including customers from the international markets. In fact, there are specific feedback that comes back from the international markets that there's a real interest in Indigenous local festivals that are intertwined with the local people and destinations. So bearing in mind allowing a lead in time so that that story can be shared, so that the international markets can engage there, is important too. So let's look now at fleshing out the narrative components for your event or festival story. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, taking the work that we've done before, looking at the narrative components, to now take all of that work and use it to define the key proposition, the unique selling point for your event or festival. Then we'll move on to look at defining your story and highlights. So the story for your event and festival. I'm going to ask you through point number 3 to be clear on your market stall. In other words, to clearly define what is available for sale. Like we said earlier, I would like you to reinforce what you're going to say verbally and in writing with really strong verbal imagery. And finally, like we stated earlier, we make it very easy for customers to book offline or online. So let's take a look now at that point number 1, defining the narrative proposition. And all the time I want you to think about how you might share your event and festival story in writing, verbally, and visually through images. So bearing in mind that you are drip feeding content into offline and online written information, verbal and visual imagery, maybe if I define the USP, the key proposition, the spine of my event festival, I might land on something like the following. A giant celebratory festival when vibrant, and you can name the place, comes alive for New Year. A toe-tapping, heart-soaring celebration of Irish dance in rural, wherever the place is. These are just examples that can get you thinking. Connect with Ireland's literary giants at the foothills of whatever mountain. Dive into a cutting-edge performing arts festival in wherever that location is. So this is how I might begin, by writing down the written communications for my story. And how will I transfer that verbally? Hello, my name is, and I represent whatever the name of my event or festival is. Through our offering, expect to experience a toe-tapping, heart-soaring celebration of Irish dance in rural, wherever the place is, knowing that by me drip feeding words, mental images into conversation with the listener, I have the power through my storytelling to compel them to book, and all the time reinforcing with visual imagery. Let's take that a step further now, defining the story and the highlights of the event and festival, and how I can carry that tone of voice offline and online. So I've just made up this festival, called it the Harvest Moon Festival, fictitious business. And what am I going to pull out are the key elements of this festival. So I'm defining it as an annual 10-day event that takes place on the first week in September. It's a celebration. Through this event, you find a celebration of nutritious and flavoursome food crafted by contemporary food artisans, from cheesemakers to beekeepers and organic farmers. What do I get to do to the event? I get to meet pioneering food producers, gaining insights into the centuries-old single ingredient methods that they offer. What am I going to find out about the place? I get to mingle with the generous and high-spirited locals in a place of breathtaking beauty, surrounded by rolling hillsides, waterfalls, and mountain views. So think of mental images. Those words immediately enlighten within our brains and allow us to visualize the location. Through our event and festival, you can get to enjoy a picnic of artisan foods overlooking whatever river or lake or stream, while watching the fireworks in the company of locals. So that's how I start to build out the destination, my narrative strands for the event and festival within the context of the destination. And then I need to drip feed from written communications, use these written tools to craft my communications, maybe via my website or through my social media posts. And then I need to think about how I'm going to present this verbally. So I would practice using words like this: my name is, my festival is, my festival or event is all about. And then I would, dwell deeper, dive deeper by using bullet points like this to create a conversation, a story that enlightens, inspires, creates clarity, and compels the listener to come and explore. All the time, from written to verbal to visual, creating clarity and compelling storytelling and communications. Moving on, and this is a really important one, and I'm going to ask you to think about this point now, between the pitch and the experience. I need to be really careful on what I am selling. If I were a retail store or if I was at a farmer's market, I would be clear on what was on my market stall. So as events and festivals, we need to be clear on the kind of experiences that we are asking our customers to purchase. So I've just made up one here, a secret garden concert that is taking place in a city centre garden venue that is disclosed 90 minutes before the start time. And through this, you get an unforgettable experience in a spectacular private garden. I'm making the customer aware, for example, there's a welcome glass of something included in the price point. So I make the inclusions crystal clear. I also have my bullet points sorted, my nice practicalities through this very simple chart, explaining the duration, for example, and what the retail price is for the ticket per person. Let's just say I'm a festival or event that has multiple, categories of things that I do, lots and lots of events, day, evening, weekend, lots of different kind of themes. Well, it's really important. And again, think about how hard businesses do this within the retail world, that we also in tourism and hospitality think about creating very clear shelves, if you like, very clear categories of the kind of experiences that we offer so that customers can easily pick and choose, identify what suits their interests, needs and budgets. So you might think about categorizing into, for example, general or premium or exclusive, or maybe according to themes. Now, let's just say you are an event or festival and you've got 30 or 40 or 200 experiences. Well, you clearly at the point of the pitch do not have the opportunity to tell the listener about 200 experiences. Nobody has that level of time. So you need to be really organized to enlighten and delight. And you might say something like this: hello, my name is, and I represent, the Secret Garden Festival. We offer more than 200 events over a 10-day period. Let me just share two of those with you now to give you an insight into what we do. And rest assured, I will send you on more details afterwards, which may be something like a web link or something like a PDF document. So in the 5 or 8 minutes I'm given, I pick two, I choose the distillation, I choose the essence to enlighten the listener rather than overwhelm them with too much content. And like we always say, we go from preparing in writing to preparing verbally to preparing visually, the communications, how we're going to share our story. And that is bringing me up to the end of today's session. So in a moment, I'm going to pass over to Leslie, but I'm going to ask you to think about this really important question. Who is in control of the narrative? Who is in control of the story? And the reality is you are. You, as the event and festival organizers, share your story individually and collectively and throughout your destination, creating that rolling tide that creates pride and identity, revenue generation, employment, and economic benefits. So I'm going to ask you to be a giant and to share your story, to encourage people to engage with the incredible events and festivals that take place in Northern Ireland and the incredible places that exist across this beautiful destination. So I'm going to wait for Leslie now to join me to take questions relating to this topic. And I would just like to remind you as Leslie joins that there's an upcoming session called Reimagining PR, which will take place on Tuesday, the 30th of March. So that's already tomorrow, in fact, from 2 to 3 o'clock. And that will be delivered by a PR and brand awareness expert, Mary O'Leary. So over to you, Leslie.
Thanks, Julie. That was great. My head's kind of swimming. There was so much there, and actually quite a lot to get through question-wise. So I'm just going to plow straight in to that, if that's okay.
Super, yes.
Yeah, wow. Sorry, I've got loads of questions here. So you talked about positioning your story based on diverse sales channels, and you talked about planning your narrative. I've had a question just about the method used to storytell. What do you think is what single medium is best for engagement with storytelling, written, image, or video?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. So really it's about really effective communications, really effective storytelling is about layering. So written, visual and verbal are really important. Videos, really important form of storytelling and communication. I would watch the duration of them. Sometimes they're really long. Again, thinking about the difference between the pitch and the experience. So if we're going to use visual imagery, if we're going to use video to share our story, really you need to look at every image, every shot taken within it, every word used within it needs to work to make sure that that story comes across. So for me, there isn't any one device for storytelling or one sales channel for storytelling. There needs to be a layering of those. But I can tell you this, there is nothing more compelling than the voice of someone who lives locally sharing a story. There's a real integrity to that. There's a real honesty. And even though I've worked in commercial strategies and marketing for all my life, I can tell you there's no fancy marketing brochure that will beat that.
Okay. And I suppose with that in mind, I think some of the events and festivals that are going to be successful coming out of this pandemic are those that have continued to tell stories to their audiences and potential audiences, despite the fact that they're not seeing them face to face. And we got a comment actually that demonstrates somebody who did that successfully. And in fact, you'll love this event, and if you haven't been to it, you'll really want to go to it. So there's an event called the Glens of Antrim Storytelling Festival.
Yes.
And they have been creating content and sharing content during the pandemic, and have reached a whole new audience compared to what they would have done with a live experience. And I think they said they've reached 12 different countries from Australia, Canada, all across Europe. And this audience has developed to such a degree that in order to make any event going forward accessible to all their audiences, that they're now considering a hybrid event, so that it's not purely live, that there is there's a virtual aspect to it. I think that's great here, that when you put the effort in, because sometimes I think you can think you're putting yourself out there into a virtual world and nobody's listening.
So Leslie, you said a really important thing to me. When I started off in my career in tourism and hospitality, and I have always sold in one guise or another the people, places, experiences across destination Ireland, okay? And I've always had a target in my head when I worked in events or wherever I worked, I had a target in my head. And I remember at the beginning, I used to think I achieved the target by luck. Oh jeepers, thank God that came in. It was just by luck. And then I realized by experience that literally when I say clarity equals conversion, that's an equation I know through experience. So what they've done is created clarity around their story. There's that gorgeous, the Glens of Antrim storytelling. And then the other really important equation for commercial strategies and storytelling, input equals outcome. You create a compelling input, it will create the outcome. And here we've got a growing audience from places, far-flung destinations like Australia. And that is no surprise to me. You tell a compelling, bear in mind what I said there earlier, that's true. And really a destination like Northern Ireland, this is in the DNA of this destination, the power of storytelling, how it does have a rhythm, how it does get stuck inside us, how a compelling story really does compel us to get off our seat and even go explore destinations that we've never thought of before. That is the power of storytelling. That's a wonderful example. Next time I'll use that in my slides to share that. Thanks to the Glens of Antrim storytelling. And yes, my ticket is booked. Thank you.
Yeah. There's another interesting discussion around the name of an event or festival. Because I suppose in some ways you could say that the story starts with the title of the story. Some events are obviously about place, so the place is in their name. So if you think about some of the events we have here, like the Enchanted Winter Garden, event which happens in Antrim Castle Gardens, and it turns Antrim Castle Gardens into an enchanted winter garden. Or something like the maritime festivals that happen in Derry or Belfast. That name tells a story of what that event is. And then you've got other events which they tell the story of people or skills or knowledge. So something like the Festival of Fools, or the Northern Ireland Science Festival, or the Belfast Children's Festival. So I suppose the question is, how important is the name in telling that story? Does it need to do exactly what it says in the tin, or is it okay to be a little bit clever, or for somebody to have to look into a name? So 2 examples before I stop speaking. Maybe something like Belsonic, which is a music festival whose name is about Belfast and Sonic, or something like the Open House Festival in Bangor, or the Aspects Literary Festival, where you have to kind of delve into what it means. So how important is the name of an event?
Yeah, so I know that there's a trend now towards really having, as you say, the name as literally the lid, the tin. And also this has been influenced by, say, Google strategies, website strategies, so that you say what you are. And yet, having said that, look at that lovely open house festival in Bangor. Or we spoke at the commercial strategies webinar about David Trans from No Alibis bookstore in Belfast, where he's done a play on words, Noir Ireland, for example. So, you know, very clever play on words, where he's taken the crime fiction genre and, you know, pulled noir into Ireland to create a really good brand statement. I just love it. And what do I see within that? It is more about the person being reflected in the name and sharing their story in that way. Like when I see even the brand Noir Ireland, and when I dig deep behind it, and you find the personality of David Trans, who of course is interested in crime fiction, and there's definitely a quirkiness, an intriguing nature that comes across in his approach in business. For me, that's a beautiful fit for what he does, even though the name is not obvious. So I suppose, think about it this way: the name of the event and festival is a bit like the story of a book. Okay, so there are stories that say what's inside, there are titles that say what's inside, and there are titles that require more exploration. But if the title reflects the person who has written the book, or the person organizing the event and festival, and then that meaning is shared through the storytelling, that gives the customer lots of intriguing reasons to explore. So it's all about synergy, really, you know. It's all about synergy. So I'm a big fan of intuition when it comes to things. You come up for the story for your event and festival, and in your heart, you know when it settles right. So when you've ended up with 10 names or 5 names, and they're all on a piece of paper, the one that feels closest to you. Storytelling is a lot about having a unique identity, and being unique compels visitors to book when it is a compelling story. So that's really important. So you don't lose that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant. I think, just to finish, Julie, I wanted to say that I think it's really important for us as a Northern Irish events industry to hear from somebody who, from the outside, or who's looking in. And one of the things you said earlier about the extraordinary ordinary, I think that storytelling is really important in making our events world class. But I think that sometimes as an event sector, we don't appreciate just how amazing our event and festivals offering is, and we can be a wee bit bashful in terms of blowing our own trumpet. So I think it's important that we learn to tell those stories and shout about the wonderful events and festivals and wider tourism scene that we have here. So thank you for just geeing us all up there.
Yeah, no, and I'd agree with that. And like my job was to sell, Destination Ireland for a very long time to the global markets. And to be honest, I realized that as someone who lives on the island, I was taking lots of things for granted. I just began to listen to what they were saying. And then you're going, Destination Northern Ireland is such a beautiful place. And literally listen to what outsiders are saying so that you do not take it for granted. But funny enough, if you say to people, if all of that stuff were taken away from you, you'd find they wouldn't be so happy then. And then I would also say this is why it's important that the stories are shared individually and collectively, layering across destinations, so that we see the unique communication styles of diverse people. And through other people's communications, we often get to appreciate our own story and our own destination more. If we achieve one thing from today's session, Leslie, that everyone listening in today gets to appreciate how beautiful Northern Ireland is and the extraordinary, ordinary that people experience every day, I would be delighted with that, enabling that to filter through written, visual, and verbal communications. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
No worries. Before everybody goes, there's just a couple of bits of housekeeping. We're going to do a couple of quick live polls, which would really appreciate everybody taking part in. So just wait for those to come up. So the first question, how have you found today's session so far in terms of content and relevance to your business? So it's a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not relevant at all and 5 being extremely relevant. So if you could vote on that, that'd be great. Perfect. And then we've got one more, the second one, final one. Do you plan to take any action in your business as a direct result of what you've heard today? And for this, it's just a simple yes or no. That's great. Thanks everyone for doing that. So I hope you found this session useful. I certainly did. All the webinars are going to be available online, and you'll receive an email after we finish up, letting you know where you can access the webinar. And that email will also give you a link to Julie's presentation and details about checklists that we're producing for each of the webinars. That acts as like a quick reference guide with hints and tips, and it'll be useful for sharing it with any colleagues. Excitingly, we're also offering limited one-to-one sessions with each of the presenters. There is a limit on the number of those, and again, details on how you can avail of that will be in that email, so keep an eye out for that. And lastly, there's also in that email an evaluation form, and we'd be really grateful if you would take some time to fill that in. So that's it. Thanks for joining us in this session. We hope you've taken away something useful. And as always, we look forward to the day when we can do this face-to-face together. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Thanks, Leslie.